I suppose appropriate for Bratfest. You know, when you think about it, our religion has a lot, of course this is being said by someone my size, but our religion has a lot to do with eating. It really does. It's all about eating. Look at the Garden of Eden. What was the Garden of Eden about? You may eat from all of the fruit of the trees of the garden, save the one in the middle. That is an old German folk song that it was eating, not drinking, that got us kicked out of paradise. It starts with eating, and then of course you move on to Abraham, who is childless. He's a wealthy man, and 3 strangers come to visit him, and what does he do? He makes a meal for them. And then you on to Moses and manna in the desert, and the Passover supper. And then this is a little obscure, but I think it's a very important idea for our faith. The temple itself was built on a threshing floor, the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant rested, which had some of the manna. That's what they put in the Ark of the Covenant, the tablets of the law that God had given Moses, the staff that Moses used, and a jar of the manna, which had fed them in the wilderness. Those were in the Ark of the Covenant, and this was put into the Holy of Holies, but the Holy of Holies was built on the threshing floor of Araunah, a citizen of the town of Jebus, which became Jerusalem, Araunah the Jebusite. And a threshing floor is, of course, about making wheat. It's making flour. That's the first step. You take the grain and you thresh it. You separate it from the chaff. In order to do that, you have to crush it. And that stone pavement, that stone high, has to be way up on a hill because the wind helps you separate the light chaff from the heavy grain. So that threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite was the foundation of the very Holy of Holies. And to this day you can see carved into that rock, which is still visible under the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, you can see carved into that rock a flat space where the ark was put so it wouldn't wobble. It's carved into the rock. Excuse me. Then, of course, Jesus took bread and wine, and we have been using bread and wine ever since. I will never forget when excuse me, when a friend of mine who was not Catholic was visiting me, and we had confirmation. And of course, in confirmation, you use oil, and of course, bread, wine, and water is necessary for the Mass. I don't know if you know this, but dry bread and lemon juice is a great way to get oil off your hands. It's sort of an abrasive, and it's an acid, and that's the traditional way you get oil off your hands. So I was putting out the bread and the wine and the water, and then the dry bread and the lemon and the holy oil, and this friend of mine looked at me and said, "What are you doing, making a Caesar salad?" It occurred to me that if you go to a Protestant church, there is no food put out before the service that's necessary for worship. We can't possibly worship if there isn't food present. And we never think of that. But it's about eating. Now, in our modern world, I got on the scale this morning, of course, and just, oh dear, the news is not good. Food has become the enemy, hasn't it? And when you think about it, food has become, when I was a boy, in another century, when the woolly mammoth roamed, you ate food. Now we seem to eat ingredients, you know. That there was a simplicity and a beauty about food. I remember it was always so much fun to go up to my Uncle Ed's cottage up in Canada across from Detroit, because it was summer. And the cantaloupes were in, and the tomatoes, and the cucumbers. It was a food fest. The ladies went up and they started to pickle. I mean, it was a rejoicing over the food that was coming in. Now, of course, you get tomatoes all year long that are strip mined somewhere in Texas. You know, that there was a cycle of life that revolved around eating. Well, what's this about? What's the sermon about? We have become, in our society, people who are overfed on things that do not nourish, physically as well as spiritually. You know, that the good things that God has given us are neglected. And instead we choose things that are not nourishing. You know, we're busy, we're we're late, we drive by the McDonald's and we supersize it, or whatever, the Burger King, and there's fast food and there's always this available and always that, instead of the beauty of living with thanksgiving. Maybe I'm just getting too old